Bring in political analyst Eleanor Dezzi. She has a long career in the political arena, working in the mayor's office of neighborhoods under Wilson Goode, among other positions. And analyst Joe Watkins, who has also had a long career in the political scene, working on the Bush Quail campaign and serving in leadership roles in many charities and nonprofit organizations. So Eleanor and Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Always glad to have you with us on election nights like this.
Great to be with you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, you know, we are taking a look, obviously, at the candidates in the Democratic primary for Philadelphia mayor. Obviously, we know that there are at least 4 or 5 that are the top contenders at this point, but it still seems to be a neck-and-neck race. So tell me what your thoughts are about how close this race is at this point between at least 3 or 4 candidates.
Well, turnout matters. So in a race like this, we have so many candidates. Turnout matters, and the capacity of any of the candidates to get their supporters to show up to vote for them on election day is really going to matter in this race. If turnout is as low as many of us think it is, it's really going to matter. Every single vote's going to matter, and we're going to be, I'm sure, counting votes. Well, we'll see. There may be people waiting right before 8 o'clock to vote and still haven't voted yet because it's just after 8 o'clock. But I think we'll know earlier rather than later as to how it looks.
Yeah, I think it's going to be absolutely turnout is going to be crucial. And each of these candidates that we are claiming are in the top 4, they all have a constituency. But interestingly enough, what I'm hearing is that the #1 issue that was on the minds of the voters walking into the polls today, and I spoke to a lot of them in different neighborhoods, and I was down in South Philadelphia this afternoon, crime and education. And that each one of those candidates has to define what they're going to do. And I will say that the people that came out, and Joe, I agree, turnout's going to be late, but the people that came out, they had made a very thoughtful decision on who they were going to vote for. They did not take this lightly. So I think it was a very, very thoughtful vote today, and but I think we're going to know kind of early, because for the first time, all of the poll books are they have been electronic now, and so I think that's going to make a big difference. And the commissioners were very good about getting. There were 2,500 mail-in ballots that were deficient. They got the list out early. They told the people to come into City Hall, or if they couldn't get in, they might be able to call in and turn them into provisional ballots. So it was a very, very organized race today.
And not a lot of complaints, right? That's the other thing.
No complaints. No.
Yeah, we just heard Matt Petrillo say really not any complaints at all at this point, at least on my polling places. Let's just talk a little bit about, voter turnout. I mean, it's usually, historically low anyway during a primary. And if that's the case, if that does turn out to be the case here in Philadelphia, who does that bode well for, or who's it going to go against in a sense?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's a question we'll know in a matter of hours how accurate we are. but I would say that Sherelle Parker certainly had a lot of momentum heading toward the end of the race, and especially among the African American community. If African American voters showed up in big numbers to vote for Sherelle Parker, then she'll do very, very well tonight. Helen Gim had tremendous support around the city as well. And clearly, if she's able to get her supporters to show up on election night, election day, she may end up winning this thing. But I think it's still a little bit too early to tell. Any of these folks with a great turnout could end up being the nominee tonight. So I mean, that could be Alan Dom. I mean, it could be anybody.
Well, the other interesting thing about it is that when you look at it, the very young progressives in the city seem to be going for Helen. The older progressives seem to be going for Rebecca. And I think Alan was seen as the business community and the Center City candidate. And there seemed to be more of a turnout in Center City in the 5th and the 8th ward. But you also have a lot of progressives in that ward, so it's hard to say where those 2 wards were going. So it's interesting. I think you're absolutely right, Joe, that the momentum seemed to be with Sherelle in terms of the Northwest Coalition had come together. And of course, that's East and West Mount Airy, Germantown, Chestnut Hill, and she had the endorsements of Congressman Dwight Evans up there and her mentor, former Councilwoman Marian Tasco. So I know that they were working hard. They felt that was going to be her strongest area.
Yeah, and we know that, this is the Philly mayor's race is now the most expensive in the city's history. We've seen the bombardment of ads, mostly Jeff Brown initially started out with just a barrage of advertisement. Also, Alan Dom, understand he spent at least almost $9 million of his own money on ads. How is that? You think that's going to resonate with voters, or does that make a difference, you think?
Well, we know them much better, that's for sure. I mean, we've seen and heard all about them, and the commercials have been delightful for the most part. I mean, there haven't been a lot of really mean attack commercials. For the most part, these commercials have been like, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, this is what I would do if I'm elected mayor of Philadelphia. So they've been pretty solid. But again, you've got two former mayors supporting one candidate. You've got a congressman and a bunch of ministers supporting another candidate. I mean, you've got a national U.S. senator and other U.S. members of Congress, not from the state, supporting yet another candidate. So it's going to be really a hard-fought campaign. And we'll only find out when the election numbers are in as to who was convinced by the ads.
And remember, this election had more forums than any other race in the history of the city of Philadelphia. There also is, Philadelphia, sometimes we take for granted, we are a historical city. And this was a historical race in that it's the 100th mayor and the possibility of a first woman. So, I mean, I thought that would really resonate with a lot of lifelong Philadelphians, that would, make them turn out. But, we're hearing about the turnout being light. That's a little worrisome. And $31 million spent on this race. And some of it was personal money, but a lot of the money was raised, and it was raised outside the city too. And you're right, we actually had another mayoral endorsement. Remember, Mayor Green endorsed.
That's right. That's right.
So I mean, it was amazing. And endorsements can cut both ways, because when somebody sees a certain person up there endorsing someone, and they don't like that person, what does that do to the candidate? So you have to be careful with endorsements too.
Yeah, I was going to say they could be polarizing just as well as they could help you. So you got to be careful about your endorsements.
Absolutely.
Well, we are going to check back in with you guys in just a bit as